Welcome to the morning show. It's Sunday, the 3rd of December, and I'm your host, Biola Labi. The holiday season is fast approaching with 4 weeks to Christmas. We at Arise News will be talking about some of the key elements that make up the holiday season, from food to home decorations to those memorable holiday traditions and festivities, giving and also service. On today's show, we'll be exploring the culture of service and public service in particular in Nigeria. With Yewande Sadiku, a celebrated investment banker and now a public servant. She will be sharing her transition with us, her hopes for the country, and what lays ahead at Nigeria Investment Promotion Commission. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Yewande Sadiku is the Executive Secretary for the Nigeria Investment Promotion Commission. Before her appointment last year, she was one of the leading female bankers in Nigeria, with a career in investment banking spanning over 20 years. During her illustrious banking career, she was the Executive Director of Corporate and Transactional Banking at Stanbic IBTC Holdings. She was also served as Chief Executive of Stanbic IBTC Capital Limited. During her time at the bank, she was responsible for the execution of debt and equity issues, mergers and acquisitions, and numerous financial advisory assignments. She is also a member of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, and in addition to running a busy division at the bank, she found time to produce the highly acclaimed screen adaptation of Chimamanda Adichie's best-selling novel, Half of a Yellow Sun. Yewande, welcome to Arise Studio.
Thank you very much.
You are not a busy lady at all, are you? So tell me, I mean, over 20 years in banking. Actually, tell us more about some of your traditions for the holidays. So we've had someone talk about giving and the culture of giving in Nigeria. We've had someone come on and talk about sort of Owambe culture and eventing. And today I'm excited to have you on to talk about service. So tell me a little bit about sort of some of your traditions for the holidays and sort of how you instill these values in your family.
So holidays for my family are about togetherness and food.
So we're going to still have a big show about food, so we'll make sure to tune in on that day. And then, so when you talk about food, like what are some of the traditional things you always make sure you have on the table?
We're not Christians, we're a family of Muslims.
Okay.
But we
do you do New Year's for New Year's celebration?
We celebrate Christmas.
Okay.
But we just don't have, I don't know, turkey or whatever.
Okay.
But yes, you know, Christmas is a time where there's a lot more food than there would normally be at any other time of year. My children and I enjoy cooking together, enjoy baking together. We bring out our grill. We have a lot of barbecues in the garden.
Okay. I need to snag me an invitation to one of those barbecues. I'm a barbecue fan.
We have family around. You know, children are always on holiday. My sister, it's either we're mine, we're my sisters, or we're visiting friends in, you know, different countries.
Oh, cool.
But the holiday is about, you know, being grateful for being alive, first of all, but being grateful for also the warmth and the love of family and friends. And what a beautiful way to celebrate that. What other way than around the dining table, eating and eating.
No, it was really great talking sort of about giving and really philanthropy and charity, and also talking about events and sort of managing your event calendar of the holiday. But I really want to talk about you. I mean, you are an investment banker, over 20 years in investment banking. What was that like actually being a banker, like now that you haven't been? Because being a banker, it would be hard to ask you what it's like being a banker because that's all you know. Like now, sort of like stepping away from that, what is that life like now that you've stepped away from it? Do you miss it?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I was in banking for 23 years. I'd spent 2 as a commercial banker when I started my career. And because it's all I know, you know, the long hours I'd gotten used to, the reality of work being ever present in your life. So your BlackBerry, your phone is never too far away. A call from a client could come at any time of day, Saturday or Sunday. you're literally working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Okay, you're not working when you're sleeping, but a client could call you at any time. Yes. I mean, I've got calls even now in the public sector at 5 a.m. asking me about one thing or the other. I don't think anything about, groggy from sleep, picking up the phone and answering the person. Because in my life as a banker, it was something that I had to get used to. But what I find is a sharp difference between the private sector and the public sector is one, mentality, two, the resources, and three, the quality of the people that you work with, because there's a massive difference. There's a massive difference between the two.
So let's talk about mentality first. What do you mean when you say mentality?
In the private sector, people work for money. People work
money, money, money.
People work for altruistic reasons, sure. But first they work because that is their means of livelihood. Sure. And there's a different commitment to quality, to time and the like, because you realize if the delivery doesn't come on time, if it's not of the right quality, you may not get paid to do it. Sure. In the public sector, the culture is somewhat different. It's a little bit more relaxed. It's a little bit more laid back. But there's a good deal of information. There's a lot more information on the public sector side of that divide than on the private sector side. But the intellectual capital that is required to understand and fully appreciate the value of that information is on the private sector side.
So tell me more about resource, because you said there's a mentality, there's resource.
In the private sector, in the banks that I worked for, we went through a very rigorous, diligent recruitment process. We wanted our output to be the best, so we tried to put in the best input to get the best output. And the best input was everything from the type of people we hired, when we hired them, the way, their mentality, the way they think, the philosophy, the alignment of their philosophy with that of the institution. The tools and resources that you have for work, whether it's from a budgeting perspective or physical equipment to do your work. On the public sector side, things are much leaner. And I guess there are different things you have to balance on the public sector side. One of the first things I learned when I joined the public sector was this principle of federal character. To be honest, I knew it just as words. And I wondered before I joined the public sector, why federal character? I didn't understand the importance of it. Now, 1 year in the public sector, I fully appreciate why federal character is a necessity. But I also see that the reason many people in the private sector don't understand the value of that philosophy is because in some ways, and in many quarters, in reality, it has not been implemented the way it was intended. The object is simply to ensure, as diverse as we are as a country, that government offices reflect that diversity. It doesn't suggest you should tone down the quality. It just suggests that you should reflect that diversity. And there isn't any part of Nigeria, culture, any local government, any state, where you cannot find good quality people.
So let me ask you, when we talk about federal character, because I've always found this to be quite curious and very interesting as well. Number one is I like the fact that it's really diversity. It's basically saying
that's
diversity.
All it is.
However, when I've seen it implemented, I've not seen it in fully implemented in saying when we say diversity, to really also be making sure that it's representative in all ways. So, for example, men and women, like that diversity. If you still walk through a lot of the halls of most places in Nigeria, there is if you look at the average, there are more men than women.
Absolutely.
When you think about implementing this federal character, where do you feel that when in public service it's done very well, and where do you feel like there's still some areas which we need to catch up on?
So the federal character principle in public service is not about gender diversity.
Sure. It's just diversity in general.
It's just geographic diversity,
Is that limiting then?
No, it isn't, to be honest. If it is applied the way it is intended, the way it is intended is that you set a minimum standard of what you're looking for, and you ensure that you let everybody across Nigeria know that you're looking to fill a particular position, But having defined that standard, you then make sure that you find the best quality people from across Nigeria. Otherwise, there will be a concentration from one part of Nigeria or the other. What I've seen, the limitation in the application, is that commitment to finding the right people. So people just find people from... So in implementing it wrongly, rather, you could get anybody from a part of Nigeria rather than the right quality person. Yes. Rather than the right quality person from any part of Nigeria. And the guidelines specifically actually say that under no circumstances should federal character be used as an excuse for hiring incompetent people into positions. So the object was not to water down the quality of competence. The object was just to ensure diversity. And if we want to apply it correctly, we can apply it correctly.
And you believe that in today's age and time, that federal character is still an important part of our
Absolutely.
public service
I believe
makeup.
it completely. I believe it completely. I have friends from all over Nigeria. I have brilliant friends from all over Nigeria. There isn't a single part of Nigeria that has a monopoly of brilliant people. The principle of federal character is simply in filling positions, you make sure you respect that diversity. Because it's very easy to hire people who kind of speak like you, who kind of dress like you. And the principle of federal character, we all need to remember that Nigeria belongs to all of us and try to ensure, that diversity in...
Did you find that some of these things that you, from the outside, sort of looked at as being an impediment coming into public service, you were sort of surprised at how much you felt that it was actually important now that you're on the other side?
Absolutely, absolutely. Something else that I thought going in, there's this arrogance, and I have to admit, there's this arrogance in the private sector, that we know about quality, we have all the information, we know how to do this, that, and the other. And maybe that's true. But what the private sector has an overwhelming abundance of is intellectual capital. There's a lot more intellectual capital, I have to admit, on the private sector side of the divide than there is on the public sector side of the divide. But when it comes to information, the tilt by a mile is way in favor, of the public sector. In fact, the private sector, when I look now at the private sector, I see a bunch of ignorant people who actually have a little bit of information, but they know how to use it. On the public sector side, there's an abundance of information, but there isn't as much appreciation for the value of that information. And in the agency that I work for, one of the things that I'm committed to doing, one of the things that I'm trying very hard to ensure is that people understand the value of that information and we translate it in a way that we demonstrate what the public sector is capable of, because I believe that I work for a very strongly capable institution.
So, one of the things you say that's really interesting is this intellectual IP that is sitting in the private sector. How do we shift that? Or how do we sort of start to bridge that to come together?
I'm so happy you asked this question. I would have been very upset if you went through this interview and you didn't ask the question. So I'm living proof of what needs to happen. And I'm not the only one that's living proof of what needs to happen. But we need to have a lot more people from the private sector go into the public sector and vice versa. So for the private sector, first, it is a very humbling experience to go in thinking, I'm smart and I know everything. And then you get there and you realize, okay, I am smart, but I actually don't know that much. These people know a lot more than I do. And you have a lot to learn from, this mass of data, this mass of information that we have. How do we use it for Nigeria's benefit? On the public sector side, it's an appreciation of the commercial realities. Okay, there's time, but time, there's a good reason they say time is money. Everybody only has 24 hours in a day. The question is, what did you do with yours? And there needs to be an appreciation on the public sector side that, the world is not waiting, that when people want approvals, when people want things done, they want it done yesterday because it has commercial implications for them. So appreciating that, and then appreciating, that commitment to doing it properly, doing it well, doing it with some rigor. There isn't as much dedication, to be honest.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I really want to delve into the work you're doing at the commission. Thank you. We're going to take a short break, but stay tuned. We'll have more from our guest and the latest on her role at the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission when we return.
Thinking of banking in Africa? Then think Zenith, one of the biggest in Nigeria, with assets over $16 billion, listed among the 20 most influential brands in the world, and winner of Best Bank in Corporate Governance. The most customer-focused bank in Nigeria, a success built on 3 foundations, dedicated to people, technology, service. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
Our customers are focused, versatile, superheroes. Our customers are also the most important people in our world. So we listen, partner, and give solutions that make a difference in their world. At First Bank, we will always put you first.
You first. First Bank.
Welcome back. This is Arise News Channel. You're watching the morning show with me, Biola Labi. I'm still in the studio with my guest, Yewande Sadiku, the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Investment and Promotion Commission. Yewande, thank you so much for still being here with us. So, we've heard a little bit about you and your history in banking and the private sector. Let's delve a little bit more into your current work at the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. For all our viewers at home who may not be as familiar, the NIPC is a federal government agency that was established by Act of Parliament number 16 of 1995, to, among others, encourage, promote, and coordinate investment in the Nigerian economy. Essentially, they operate to help in Nigeria and around the world better understand how to invest in Nigeria and help grow the economy. So, for people at home, what do you do every day? What does that mean? Like, I mean, when you said you were an investment banker, we kind of understood that, but tell us now what this means in your new role.
The first thing I'd like to say is that I completely enjoy my job. And as much as I loved banking, it's strange, but I don't miss it.
Really?
No, I don't miss it.
Oh,
I'm having too much fun doing what I'm doing now.
And as a public servant, were you a little bit surprised that you're having this much fun?
Yes, to be honest. But I went in with an open mind, and I went in with a sense of, I don't know it all, I know I'm going to learn. But NIPC, as you said, was established by an act, encourage, promote, and coordinate investments. The act lists 13 principal functions that NIPC is supposed to perform. But fundamentally, the way I see NIPC's role, the first part is projecting a positive image for Nigeria as an attractive investment destination. The second one is promoting investments in Nigeria, whether those investments be from Nigerians or non-Nigerians. The third part is providing quality aftercare to those who have already invested in Nigeria and to providing investors with support services. The Act, for instance, mandates NIPC to act as a liaison between investors and government agencies. Now, if you look at these first 3 aspects of NIPC's mandate, it involves active engagement with the private sector. The implication is that we understand what the needs of investors are, we understand what their pain points and the like are. And that leads to the 4th part of NIPC's mandate, which is policy advocacy, where we advise government on policy initiatives, changes, introductions and the like that are required to help Nigeria achieve its investment objectives. The way I see it, a good investment promotion agency, which is what NIPC strives to be, should be a bridge between the private and public sector. For government, we are that person or that agency that helps government understand what the private sector wants. So we're almost like the private sector voice.
You guys are a translator.
Yes.
You translate between the two entities, the private sector and public sector.
Absolutely.
So you guys are sort of sitting in the middle,
Absolutely.
which then makes you so well equipped for this, because not only have you been an investment banker, your job as an investment banker was actually working with a lot of different clients. I mean, you worked on mergers and acquisitions, you worked on so many different advisory work on big deals. So tell me, how do you feel like that role has prepared you for this role?
In my previous role, I advised, I worked with companies to help prepare them for going public, for mergers, for acquisitions and the like. But all of that required me to, in many instances, sell the country before I could sell the company. But my focus was on selling the company. The difference between that and now is that my focus is on selling the country. And I like to say that, historically I worked for commercial reasons. That's the reality. I mean, I worked for clients, not only because they were trying to do bigger things, but because they were going to pay me to advise them. Now, a lot of the services that NIPC provides, we provide for free.
So how does someone come in and say, I want you to? Like, how do you even find people to help, or is it just a general thing? Like, how do you engage with the private sector?
Very actively, very actively. Perhaps that's because of my own private sector background. But this year, we've launched a number of initiatives. We had 3 days in Lagos, about the middle of the year, where we met different private sector groups, lawyers, accountants, investment bankers, commercial bankers, securities exchanges and the like, to help them understand NIPC's mandate and NIPC's role. We met bilateral chambers of commerce, we met sector-specific groups, we met the organized private sector. The better they understand what we do, the better we can do our job. I also find very strongly that although NIPC's mandate says it's investment promotion, obviously the job of promoting a country as big and diverse as Nigeria cannot be that of one agency alone. In fact, it cannot be that of government alone. And what I did in my life as an investment banker was investment promotion for Nigeria, although for different reasons. So all that universe of professionals who already operate in the space, and then the states where the investments go to, we all need to work very actively together. So we've been working very collaboratively with a number of stakeholders in the private sector, stakeholders in the public sector.
So one of the things that I picked up from what you said that really interested me is local investment. So tell me more about that. Sort of how do you sort of identify people that you think, okay, they should be doing more local investment, and then how do you sort of begin that conversation and engagement? And give us an example of what that looks like.
Okay, so historically, there was a big focus on attracting foreign direct investment. To be honest, most investment promotion agencies, they call them IPAs for short. So most IPAs were set up to specifically almost attract foreign direct investment. But at NIPC, we realized that as wealthy as Nigerians are, we need to do a lot more in attracting Nigerians to invest in their own country, not just attracting foreigners to invest in the country. So we've been working with several state governments. I've been going around myself on a state-by-state basis. In my first year, because I'm now in my second year.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. But in my first year, I did over 20 state visits.
Oh, wow.
Yes, a lot more in 1 year than I did in 10 years.
Well, tell me some of your, I know people are watching, but tell me some of your favorite places that you visited on this.
So my family was amazed when I said I was going to Maiduguri.
Okay.
I went to Maiduguri in February, and there was some concern, about
safety. I mean,
about safety. I mean, it's a valid concern. And I've been to Maiduguri before, actually as an investment banker to look for investors on a transaction that we did, marketing a Nigerian corporate. But I was amazed at how developed. I mean, driving through parts of Maiduguri, you could have been driving through anywhere in Lagos, anywhere in Kaduna. There's a vibrant, active economy. There are people who need goods, who need services. And I find, because many people focus on the reality of the crisis, there isn't as much of a consideration about the economic needs of the people and the economic potential of that region. I've been to Sokoto. I'd never been to Sokoto before.
Okay.
And Sokoto has the best kilishi. You know, there's kilishi. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. In fact, I've gone to Sokoto twice now, and every time I go to Sokoto...
That's the one thing you go for, kilishi. Okay, I have to... I've not been to Sokoto at all.
I'm supposed to be doing investment promotion, but you can't forget the kilishi while you're visiting. Edo, I've done 3 times.
Okay.
Enugu.
Okay.
Jos
Enugu is really nice. I like Enugu.
Enugu is really... Every time I go to a state I've never been to, I think, oh my God, look at the potential that Nigeria has. And you almost think that's the only state that has that potential. And then you go to another one and you're wowed by the potential of that state. Niger State has the 3 hydro dams we have in Nigeria sit in Niger State. It's not it's not a mistake when they call it the power state of the nation. Niger State, between Niger and Benue, you have the 2 largest states in Nigeria. Ideally, with a focus on agriculture in those states, they not only have the potential to feed Nigeria, they literally have the potential to feed the continent.
So are you, are you sort of getting, as you tell the story, because you're telling a very good story, are these the stories you're telling international and foreign investors and also local investors? And how are you seeing a shift in sort of the mood? Because I know at the beginning of the year, we did sort of have that bit of a sort of forex crisis, and there was sort of a lot of like FDI flight. How are you seeing the mood change now, especially with this role?
We actually see a lot of interest in Nigeria, and we have a newsletter that goes out 6 days a week that calls investment news from different quarters and pulls all together and sends out to those on our database. We don't have a large enough database, so I'm personally appealing to everybody, not just investors, to subscribe to the NIPC newsletter, and you can do that by visiting our website, nipc.gov.ng. So that newsletter allows us to see the sort of investment opportunities, investment inquiries, apart from the visits that we have to our office, to see what sectors, what states, and what countries investor interest is coming from. And investor interest, in our view, remains strong, and remained strong through the crisis. The difference between pre-crisis and post-crisis is that during the crisis, people were looking and making inquiries, but may not have been making investments. Okay. But they continued their field work and their understanding of the potential of the market. Because the potential of Nigeria is such that I personally believe 20 years, 30 years down the line, managers will be queried.
If they don't invest now.
Absolutely, absolutely. I believe it completely.
Wow. So from investment banker to chief Nigerian promoter for investment, I have to say thank you so much for being here today. This was great. That's the end of our show this morning. I'm Biola Alabi. Thanks again to my guest, Yewande Sadiku, the Executive Secretary of the Nigeria Investment Promotion Commission. And thank to all of you at home for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you next week.